Welcome back to another NFL Weekly Recap in which we are going to cover Week 8 of the 2024 NFL season. Let me know in the comments below, who do you guys think will win the matchups in Week 9? If you like this type of content, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I appreciate all the support as we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. So without further ado, let's get straight into this one. Let's get it. Thursday Night Football was between the Minnesota Vikings and the Los Angeles Rams, in which the Rams defeated the Vikings 30-20. The Rams are now 3-4, while the Vikings fall to 5-2. Sam Darnold went 18 for 25 for 240 yards and 2 touchdowns. Aaron Jones led the team in rushing with 58 yards, and Justin Jefferson led the team in receiving with 115 yards. Josh Oliver and Trent Sherfield Jr. both had touchdowns on the day. Matthew Stafford went 25 for 34 with 279 yards, 4 touchdowns to 1 interception. Kyren Williams led the team in rushing with 97 yards on the day. Puka Nacua led the team in receiving with 106 yards, while Cooper Kupp and Kyren Williams had a touchdown each receiving, and Demarcus Robinson had 2 touchdowns on the day. The Vikings started off scoring with a touchdown, which was answered back by touchdowns on each side. We were all tied up at 14 apiece by both sides, but after that scoring frenzy, it was all tied up at 14 apiece heading into halftime. And on the first drive of the second half, the Vikings scored a field goal to take a 17-14 lead over the Rams, which was then responded back by 2 Rams touchdowns. And then the Vikings were also able to score 1 field goal as the Rams led 28-20. And on the final drive, there was a controversial call in which Sam Darnold was called for a safety, which gave us the final score of 30-20. Let me know in the comments below, do you guys think that final play, that final drive, was a face mask on Darnold? Let me know in the comments below. Next game of the week was between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Cincinnati Bengals, in which the Eagles beat the Bengals 37-17. The Eagles go up to 5-2, while the Bengals fall to 3-5. Jalen Hurts went 16 for 20 with 236 yards and a touchdown. Saquon Barkley led the team in rushing with 108 yards, while Jalen Hurts had 3 rushing touchdowns on the day. Devonta Smith led the team in receiving with 85 yards and a touchdown on the day. Joe Burrow went 26 for 37 with 234 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Chase Brown led the team in rushing with 32 yards and a touchdown. Mike Gesicki led the team in receiving with 73 yards, while Jamar Chase scored a touchdown receiving on the day. The Bengals scored on their first 2 drives to take a 10-3 lead over the Eagles, and the Eagles were able to tie it up at 10 at halftime. To start off the second half, the Eagles scored 2 touchdowns on their first 2 drives, while the Bengals were able to score 1 of their own. The Eagles then scored another field goal and another touchdown to take a 34-17 lead over the Bengals, and capped it off with 1 final field goal to win 37-17. The next game of the week was between the Los Angeles Chargers and the New Orleans Saints. The Chargers beat the Saints 26-8. The Chargers are now 4-3, while the Saints fall to 2-6 as they have lost 6 in a row after starting off the season 2-0. Spencer Rattler went 12 for 24 for 156 yards, being benched for Jake Haener, who went 9 for 17 and 122 yards. Alvin Kamara led the team in rushing with 67 yards, while Chris Olave led the team in receiving with 107 yards on the day. Justin Herbert went 20 for 32 with 279 yards and 2 touchdowns. J.K. Dobbins led the team in rushing with 57 yards and a touchdown, while Ladd McConkey led the team in receiving with 111 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. And on the second drive to start off the game, the Chargers were stopped in the end zone for a safety after a muffed punt. The Chargers then scored a field goal in the second quarter to make it 2-3. What a weird scoreline. But on the final drive of the first half, the Chargers scored a field goal but missed the extra point. But the Saints followed it up with a field goal heading into halftime. The Chargers led 9-5. The Chargers then led the game by scoring in the second half, scoring a touchdown, taking a 16-5 lead over the Saints. The Saints scored a field goal, which was answered right back with the Chargers' field goal of their own. The Chargers then capped it off with one final touchdown to give us the final score of 26-8. The next game of the week was a divisional game in the AFC East between the New England Patriots and the New York Jets, in which the Patriots beat the Jets 25-22, and both teams are 2-6 heading into Week 9. Aaron Rodgers went 17 for 28 with 233 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Breece Hall led the team in rushing with 80 yards. Braylon Allen also scored a touchdown on the day. Garrett Wilson led the team in receiving with 113 yards, while Tyler Conklin had a touchdown, as well as Xavier Gibson receiving. Drake May got hurt early on in the game as Brissett took over, went 15 for 24 with 132 yards, while Ramondre Stevenson led the team in rushing with 48 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Drake May also had a touchdown rushing, while Kayshon Boutte led the team in receiving with 46 yards on the day. The Patriots scored the first touchdown, which was answered right back by 2 Jets touchdowns as they took a 13-7 lead heading into halftime. To start off the second half, the Patriots scored a touchdown on their first drive, which was answered back by a Jets field goal, giving the Jets a 16-14 lead over the Patriots. It wasn't until the fourth quarter that the Patriots scored a field goal to take a 17-16 lead over the Jets, which was followed up by a Jets touchdown, which was then right back responded with a Patriots touchdown of their own as they took the lead 25-22. The next game of the week was between the Green Bay Packers and the Jacksonville Jaguars, in which the Packers beat the Jaguars 30-27. The Packers are 6-2, while the Jaguars fall to 2-6 heading into Week 9. Jordan Love went 14 for 22 with 196 yards and an interception, and Malik Willis took over in a drive as he went 4 for 5 for 56 yards and a touchdown. Josh Jacobs led the team in rushing with 127 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Tucker Kraft led the team in receiving with 78 yards and a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence went 21 for 32 with 308 yards, 2 touchdowns to 1 interception, while Tank Bigsby led the team in rushing with 78 yards, while Trevor Lawrence had a rushing touchdown as well. Rookie Brian Thomas Jr. led the team in receiving with 60 yards and a touchdown, as well as Evan Ingram having a touchdown of his own. The Packers got the first 10 points of the game and was answered right back with a Jaguars touchdown, and it was a field goal fest at the end of the first half as the Packers took a 13-10 lead over the Jaguars. Both teams traded touchdowns in the second half as the score was 20-17 in favor of Green Bay. Green Bay then scored another touchdown to give themselves a 27-17 lead over the Jaguars, and the Jaguars then scored the next 10 points to tie it up at 27, and the Packers won with a game-winning field goal as they won 30-27. The next game of the week was between the Detroit Lions and the Tennessee Titans, in which the Lions beat the Titans 52-14. The Lions are 6-1, while the Titans fall to 1-6. Mason Rudolph started the game as he went 22 for 38 with 266 yards, 1 touchdown to 2 interception. Tony Pollard led the team in rushing with 94 yards, while Mason Rudolph had a touchdown on the ground. Calvin Ridley led the team in receiving with 143 yards, while Nick Westbrook-Akine scored a touchdown on the day. Jared Goff went 12 for 15 with 85 yards and 3 touchdowns, while David Montgomery had a passing touchdown of his own. Jahmyr Gibbs led the team in rushing with 127 yards and a touchdown, while David Montgomery had a rushing touchdown of his own as well. Sam Laporta led the team in receiving, while him, Khalif Raymond, Brock Wright, and Amon-Ra St. Brown each had a receiving touchdown on the day. There was a touchdown fest between both teams in the first half, as the score was 35-14 heading into halftime. There was a punt return touchdown by the Lions as they took a 42-14 lead over the Titans. The Titans did not score in the second half, and the Lions padded on their lead, winning 52-14. The next game of the week was the NFC South divisional matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons beat the Buccaneers 31-26. The Falcons are now 5-3, while the Buccaneers fall to 4-4. Kirk Cousins went 23 for 29 with 276 yards and 4 touchdowns. Bijan Robinson led the team in rushing with 63 yards on the day. Kyle Pitts led the team in receiving with 91 yards and 2 touchdowns. Both Darnell Mooney and Bijan Robinson had a touchdown receiving as well. Baker Mayfield went 37 for 50 with 330 yards, 3 touchdowns to 2 interceptions, while Bucky Irving led the team in rushing with 44 yards on the day. Cade Otton led the team in receiving with 81 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Rachaad White had a touchdown of his own as well. The Falcons scored first, which was then responded by a Buccaneers touchdown, and then both teams exchanged touchdowns to get all tied up at 14 apiece. And at the end of the first half, Atlanta had a 24-17 lead over the Buccaneers, and then the Falcons scored another touchdown in the second half to make it 31-17. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers then scored a safety on the Falcons to make it 31-19, while scoring a touchdown on the next drive. The score gave us the final score of 31-26 as the Falcons held on. The next game of the week was between the Arizona Cardinals and the Miami Dolphins, in which the Cardinals beat the Dolphins 28-27. The Cardinals are now at 500 at 4-4, while the Dolphins fall to 2-5. Kyler Murray went 26 for 36 with 307 yards and 2 touchdowns. James Conner led the team in rushing with 53 yards and a touchdown, while Trey McBride led the team in receiving with 124 yards, while Marvin Harrison Jr. had 111 yards as well. He also had a touchdown, while Michael Wilson also had a receiving touchdown. Tua Tagovailoa went 28 for 38 with 234 yards and a touchdown, while Devin Achane led the team in rushing with 97 yards. Raheem Mostert had 2 rushing touchdowns, while Tyreek Hill led the team in receiving with 72 yards. Devin Achane also had a receiving touchdown on the day. The Dolphins opened up the scoring with the first 10 points, while the Cardinals answered with a touchdown. The Dolphins scored a field goal at halftime to give the score of 13-7. The Cardinals then scored a field goal, which was answered back by a Dolphins touchdown as they took a 20-10 lead in the third quarter. Both teams exchanged touchdowns as the Cardinals cut the score down to 2 as Miami led 27-25. It wasn't until the final seconds that they kicked a last-second field goal as they beat the Dolphins as the clock expired 28-27. The next game of the week was a divisional matchup in the AFC North between the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, in which the Browns beat the Ravens 29-24. The Ravens are 5-3, while the Browns are now 2-6. Lamar Jackson went 23 for 38 for 289 yards and 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry led the team rushing with 73 yards and a touchdown. Zay Flowers led the team in receiving with 115 yards, while Nelson Aguilar and Mark Andrews each had a touchdown on the day. Jameis Winston went 27 for 41 with 334 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Nick Chubb led the team in rushing with 52 yards. Cedric Tillman led the team in receiving with 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, while David Njoku had a receiving touchdown as well. Both teams exchanged field goals to start off the game, and heading into halftime, the Ravens were leading 10-6. The Browns then scored a touchdown on the first drive of the second half, while the Ravens answered with a touchdown. The Browns answered with one of their own as they took a 20-17 lead over the Ravens, and they each traded field goals and touchdowns to give us the final score of 29-24, as the Browns were able to hold on and beat their divisional opponents. The next game of the week was between two divisional opponents in the AFC South, the Houston Texans and the Indianapolis Colts, in which the Texans beat the Colts 23-20. The Texans are now 6-2, while the Colts fall to 500 at 4-4. Anthony Richardson went 10 for 32 with 175 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, while Jonathan Taylor led the team in rushing with 105 yards and a touchdown. Josh Downs led the team in receiving with 109 yards and a touchdown. CJ Stroud won 25 for 37 with 285 yards and a touchdown, while Joe Mixon led the team in rushing with 102 yards and a touchdown. Stephon Diggs led the team in receiving with 81 yards, while Tank Dell had a touchdown on the day. Both teams exchanged field goals to start off the game, while exchanging touchdowns later on in the first half. The Texans then scored a touchdown on the final drive of the first half, taking a 17-10 lead heading into halftime. Both teams exchanged field goals and touchdowns as Houston took a 23-20 lead over the Colts in the middle of the fourth quarter and held on to beat their divisional rivals. The next game of the week was between the Buffalo Bills and the Seattle Seahawks, in which the Bills beat the Seahawks 31-10. The Bills are now 6-2, while the Seahawks fall to 4-4. Josh Allen won 24 for 34 with 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. James Cook led the team in rushing with 111 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Khalil Shakir led the team in receiving with 107 yards. Both Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid each had a touchdown. Geno Smith won 21 for 29 with 212 yards and an interception, while Geno Smith led the team in rushing with 16 yards, but Zach Charbonnet had a touchdown on the ground. Jackson Smith and Jigba led the team in receiving with 69 yards on the day. The Bills scored the touchdown first, and it was then responded by a Seattle field goal, and on the final drive of the first half, the Bills scored a touchdown, taking a 14-3 lead over Seattle heading into halftime. The Bills then scored the next 17 points to take a 31-3 lead over the Seahawks. The Seahawks were able to salvage a touchdown, but the Bills dominated and won 31-10. This was definitely the game of the week, with the most climactic ending between the number 1 and number 2 picks of this year's NFL draft. It was between Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. The Commanders beat the Bears on a final second Hail Mary pass as they beat the Bears 18-15. What a awesome game we had right there. Caleb Williams went 10 for 24 with 131 yards. DeAndre Swift led the team in rushing with 129 yards and a touchdown, while Rome Odunze led the team in receiving with 41 yards on the day. Jaden Daniels went 21 for 38 with 326 yards and a touchdown, while Brian Robinson Jr. led the team in rushing with 65 yards. Terry McLaurin, Scary Terry, led the team in receiving with 125 yards, while Noah Brown had a touchdown on the day. The Commanders scored the first 6 points of the game, make it 9 as they led 9-0 over the Bears heading into halftime. They then scored a field goal to take a 12-0 lead, which was then responded by a Bears touchdown, which made the score 7-12. On the final Bears drive of the game, they scored a touchdown to give themselves a 15-12 lead with 25 seconds remaining, and the Commanders then had a Hail Mary heave in which it was tipped up to Noah Brown in the end zone, and it was an electric factory to watch. The next game of the week was between the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers. The Broncos beat the Panthers 28-14, while the Panthers fall to 1-7, and the Broncos are 5-3. Bryce Young went 24 for 37 with 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Chuba Hubbard led the team in rushing with 56 yards, while Jalen Coker led the team in receiving with 78 yards and a touchdown. Xavier Legette also had a touchdown on the day. Bo Nix went 28 for 37 with 284 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Jaleel McLaughlin led the team in rushing with 47 yards, while Bo Nix also had a rushing touchdown on the day. Cortland Sutton led the team in receiving with 100 yards. Adam Troutman had a touchdown, as well as Jaleel McLaughlin receiving. The Panthers started off scoring with a touchdown, which was then tied up with a Broncos touchdown as well. They then scored 2 touchdowns on 2 consecutive plays to take a 21-7 lead heading into halftime. They then scored a touchdown to give themselves a 28-7 lead over the Panthers, and then the Panthers were able to score a touchdown on their final drive to make it 28-14. The next game of the week was between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders, a divisional game in the AFC West. The Chiefs beat the Raiders 27-20 as the Chiefs are 7-0, while the Raiders fall to 2-6. Patrick Mahomes went 27 for 38 with 262 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception, while Kareem Hunt led the team in rushing with 59 yards and a touchdown. Travis Kelce led the team in receiving with 90 yards, a touchdown, and Xavier Worthy also had a touchdown of his own. Gardner Minshew went 24 for 30 with 209 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alexander Madison led the team rushing with 15 yards, while Brock Bowers led the team in receiving with 58 yards. Jacoby Myers and DJ Turner each had a touchdown on the day. Both teams scored a touchdown on the first drive to make it 7-7, while the Raiders took a lead with a field goal 10-7, which was answered right back with a touchdown and a field goal by the Chiefs as they took a 17-10 lead over the Raiders heading into halftime. The Raiders then scored a field goal to cut the lead down to 4, which was then responded by a Chiefs field goal and a touchdown as they took a 27-13 lead. The Raiders were able to score one final touchdown on their last drive to make the final score of 27-20. The next game of the week was Sunday Night Football between the San Francisco 49ers and the Dallas Cowboys, in which the 49ers beat the Cowboys 30-24. The Niners are now 4-4, while the Cowboys fall to 3-4. Dak Prescott went 25 for 38 with 243 yards, 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Ezekiel Elliott led the team in rushing with 34 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb led the team in receiving with 146 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day. Brock Purdy went 18 for 26 with 260 yards and a touchdown, while Isaac Guerendo led the team in rushing with 85 yards and a touchdown. Brock Purdy had 56 yards on the ground and a touchdown on the day. George Kittle led the team in receiving with 128 yards and a touchdown on the day. Heading into halftime, the Cowboys led the 49ers 10-6. The 49ers then scored 3 consecutive touchdowns to start off the second half as they took a 27-10 lead over the Cowboys, and then the Cowboys answered with 2 touchdowns of their own in the fourth quarter to cut the score down to 6, which gave us the final score of 30-24 as the Niners were able to hold on. The last game of the week was Monday Night Football between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New York Giants, in which the Steelers beat the Giants 26-18. The Steelers are now 6-2, while the Giants fall to 2-6. Daniel Jones went 24 for 38 with 264 yards and an interception. Tyrone Tracy Jr. led the team in rushing with 145 yards and a touchdown, while Darius Slayton led the team in receiving with 108 yards. Russell Wilson went 20 for 28 with 278 yards and a touchdown, while Najee Harris led the team in rushing with 114 yards. George Pickens led the team in receiving with 74 yards, while Calvin Austin III had a touchdown on the day. Heading into halftime, we were all tied up at 9 apiece, while the Steelers had a punt return touchdown in the third quarter to take a 16-9 lead over the Giants, which was then capped off by an exchange of touchdowns to give us the score of 15-23, and then field goals were exchanged by both teams to give us the final score of 26-18. And those were all the games for Week 8. Let me know in the comments below, who do you guys think will win their matchups in Week 9? And if you're a fan of this content, like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I appreciate all the support as we are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. If you're a fan of the NFL and college football, stay tuned as we'll be covering both all season long. Appreciate all the support, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.